But then Mr. O'Donnell takes this a bit further to kind of demonstrate his conversance, and I use that term lightly because while he does cite some things, he doesn't give the full context, and he makes some rather rash assumptions as to what things mean and what they don't mean, such. He says, "I give you the words of the Holy Book of Mormon." And then he quotes, "And I beheld, after they had dwindled in unbelief, they became a dark and loathsome and a filthy people, full of idleness and all manner of abominations." This particular verse is in reference to what were the Lamanites. They did receive a mark along with the cursing that they received. The mark was not the curse. But they did dwindle in unbelief, and they became a dark, not merely in the mark of their skin, but otherwise, and loathsome in the things they did. One thing I would think would be important to bring up would be the fact that if you look at the New Testament, in the book of Matthew, chapter 15, we have an instance where a woman comes to Christ seeking to have her daughter. She says, "My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil." This is verse 22 of Matthew 15. But he answered her not a word, so Christ ignored her. And the disciples kept, telling her, "Send this lady away. She keeps coming after us." And he says, "I'm not sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So he just said, "I'm not supposed to have anything to do with her." She came and worshipped him, saying, "Lord, help me." And then this is the way Jesus Christ, the God of us Mormons, we are Christians, and the God of Christianity, this is how he responded. He says, "It is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs." Christ was basically referring to this woman and her ethnicity as dogs. I would like to see if he will come out and rage against Christians, all Christians who believe this verse of the Bible to be a true rendition of the Lord's words, if they are also then racist because they believe in a God that calls a woman and her whole ethnicity dogs. I do not believe Christ is a racist. I know Christ is not a racist. But this is to demonstrate that things are not as cut and dry as Mr. O'Donnell tries to set them out to be. He also brings up a quote here by Brigham Young, and this is a classic quote and a classic misreading of what happens. He has Brigham Young saying, first he says, "Brigham Young, the most revered president of the Mormon Church, who marched his people all the way to the Utah Territory because he so vehemently hated the laws of the United States." Well, it wasn't so much that. He hated the fact that the United States would not enforce its laws and protect us as stated in the Constitution the government was supposed to do. And this is his summary of what he's about to read. Taught that sex with black people would kill white people instantly. Now that's not what he said. That's not what Brigham Young said. I'll read the quote here and elaborate on it. Brigham Young says, "Shall I tell you the law of God in regard to the African race? If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes his blood with the seed of Cain, the African race, the seed of Cain, this isn't necessarily black people." And to demonstrate this point, if you'll go into LDS history, there are instances where white people that were considered the seed of Cain have been denied the priesthood. So this is not a black and white issue. This is something different. If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes his blood with the seed of Cain, the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so. Now it's important, the seed of Cain element there, he doesn't bring up the fact that Brigham Young also believed that if a Jew were to be baptized into our faith, he would cease to be of the seed of Judah. So this isn't this common view of, where you're born is what seed you are of. People can change. And so it is not saying what he had said. In fact, the seed of Cain and the curse accompanied with it, if any person of any color or of any original seed was to join this church, they would not be considered the seed of Cain. So as the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so. Now again, This is for the man who belongs to the chosen seed, mixes with his blood with the seed of Cain. This is this is just so far beyond what he was saying, as far as, claiming that taught that sex with black people would kill white people instantly. It's not at all what's being said. It's saying that those people who have made covenants and end up breaking those covenants would die. And if it's not saying that they can't marry people of any color of skin. I know plenty of faithful members of the church that are married to people of all different ethnicities and skin colors, and I personally have dated women of all ethnicities and would be willing to marry all of them as long as they were within my faith. I don't think that's an absurd thing to ask. And all the women I have dated in those ethnicities have been of my faith. Then he goes on. Mr. O'Donnell goes on and says, it took the Mormons 10 years after Martin Luther King was killed, 10 years to decide to allow black men to be priests. Well, again, and of course, the leaders of our church stated this, and you can see this however you like, but they did say the world will not understand, but basically God's revealed that this is the time that all people are supposed to have access, all worthy men are supposed to have access to the priesthood. The world will see it how they want, and frankly, it doesn't much matter how the world sees it. Because frankly, if you have a testimony of things, if God has communicated with you about the truthfulness of something, it doesn't much matter what the world's estimation is of those actions. So, it says they did so only after the president of the Mormon Church said he had a conversation with God. And it's funny how, it's always this inherently that can't possibly be the case, so they're obviously just changing their minds and blaming it on God. In 1978, in which God finally decided it was time to allow black priests, Mitt Romney was 31 years old when he heard that lie. Again, presumption that it is a lie. What proof does Mr. O'Donnell have of any of this, of any of the basis for his judgments on all of this? At 31, was Mitt Romney smart enough to know the Mormon president was lying about having been told? I like this smart enough. The arrogance, and you'd almost think O'Donnell thought he was God, or had attributes akin to what God has, even if he doesn't believe in God. It's kind of difficult to see him having a belief in God. In 1977, at the age of 30, was Mitt Romney still accepting the racist position of this church? Well, it wasn't racist. If you're going to consider the position we had and have as being racist, then all of religion is racist. There's not, especially within the Judeo-Christian tradition, you can't accept anything in the Judeo-Christian religion tradition, and there is elements all throughout that according to the way O'Donnell classifies it, would be racist. Did Romney know that the church had to change its racist policies in order to preserve its tax-exempt status? We'll never know. No reporter will ever ask those questions, because questions about the faith of his fathers are off limits, even though, in an attempt to win evangelical Christian votes in Iowa, Romney dragged that faith into the campaign and asked to be admired for strictly adhering to it. If the Washington Post finds that Romney ever, however briefly, belonged to a country club that did not admit blacks or Jews or Muslims, it'll be dogging him with questions about that. But there will never be questions about his faith, because as Newsweek, Eleanor Cliff said, every religion is full of crazy beliefs. Eleanor said that in response to my comments about Mormonism on last week's McLaughlin group. Eleanor has gotten no heat for that comment, but I have been attacked wildly for being right here on HuffPo, for getting into the specifics of what Romney, in effect, said he believes when he said, I believe in my Mormon faith and I endeavor to live mine. Let me tell you what, Mr. O'Donnell, if or when you end up